Thank you very much for the opportunity. I had already very good talks yesterday about digitalization, electrical cars, autonomous cars, about IoT, about cybersecurity. And I think the challenges the corporates face are almost the same. And I want to offer a solution for that. In the next 15 minutes, I would like to give you the benefits and the business impact that venture clienting offers to you. Venture clienting. Some people call it venture partnering, some people call it startup solution sourcing, some call it corporate venturing, whatever you want to call it. Let's talk about it. So my presentation has 3 parts. First part is about what are the biggest drivers of the startup ecosystem, and what are their effects on a big corporate like Bosch. The second part is about what's venture clienting. Who's Open Bosch? Who are we? What do we do? Why do we do that? How do we do that? How does that work? How does the process look like? Stuff like that. And the third part is about, okay, what do we learn now? What are we going to do differently in the future? Let's get to it. So we see 1.3 million new tech startups every single year globally at Bosch Ventures in our databases. 1.3 million. Why do we see so many startups and why do we see so many good startups? There are 2 big trends. The first trend is the technology change. You all know that. Attending this conference, you know that. I don't need to go too deep into that. It had become quite easy and cheap to found a startup. Where in the 1990s, you needed a couple of million to set up servers and to program software and to hire people and to have tools and templates on model your business. It became quite cheap. We have Amazon Web Services, free tools and templates on business model innovation, horizontal scaling, you know all that. Technology change is boosting this industry. The second trend is the decade of the cheap money. Since the Lehman crisis in 2009, interest rates have been low, money has been cheap, and capital was moving to riskier assets, and startups as one form of risky assets have been flooded with money. The first quarter of 2021 was bigger than the whole year 2017 of global VC investment volumes. You see here in the a dark blue column the investment volumes in OECD, and you see in light blue the corporate R&D spendings. Interestingly, the corporate R&D spendings are stable, but the startups of the VC volumes went up. And that means startups, especially the top startups, the lean startups, which are pure R&D. They don't have any fat at their organization, right? That's pure R&D. Startups had more money, had more budget than corporates to drive transformation. Now, interest rates went up the last 2 years, but interestingly for venture clienting, that doesn't even change the trend. I'm going to come to that. So, 2 big drivers, technology change and cheap money had a big effect on the startup ecosystem. What does that do now with a corporation like Bosch? 3 effects. First effect, we had to review our image of startups. A couple of years ago, when you go to a Bosch plant and you ask the plant manager, hey, what's a startup? They probably said, that's a 23-year-old academic who likes to code and who has a business idea now. Now, that's not my image of a top startup. Top startups are experienced founders. They have interdisciplinary teams. They have a long experience in their industry. They have a clear pain point identified, and they're very decisive and trying to solve this issue, and they're massively funded. I'll give you an example here. I have many examples, other examples. I don't want to advocate for this startup here, but it's a good example. StoreDot. It's an Israeli company. They make quickly loading batteries, founded in 2012, and at their Series A, when they had 15, 20 associates, they raised 120 million. Which Bosch department with 15, 20 people has 120 million to develop one product? So the relation between resource and capital availability to business focus has totally flipped within the top startups. It's not anymore like, we are the big Bosch and this little startup. No, that's the other way around. In this context, for that technology, like, we are Bosch and we have an eye level, this partner here we can work with, right? So we had to review our image of startups. First effect on Bosch. Second effect. Oh, that's another startup, another Elevance. They make special chemicals out of natural oils. 50 employees raised 400 million. There are lots of examples for that. Second effect, we had to review our R&D spendings. Bosch is a very old traditional engineering company, and we are proud of our R&D. 7 billion in R&D. But compared to venture capital out there, that's peanuts. So we Bosch Ventures, we advocate for treating the venture capital out there as R&D budget of Bosch that Bosch does not have to raise to make use of those solutions. Venture capital out there is our external R&D budget. The second effect on Bosch. And the third effect is we had to become an easy client for those companies, for those startups. Like before founding Open Bosch, if Bosch wanted to meet a startup, they ran in a minibus and drove 15 engineers and 5 lawyers to the startup CEO to assess risks. That's not the way how you initiate a partnership and how you get quickly into a POC. So being an easy client doesn't mean a stupid client. It's not being a risky client. Being an easy client is a person who understands his own problem, who has the commitment to solve it, who has the evaluation competence to say, well, that solution does help me, and that solution does not, and who's very decisive and acts fast. That's a committed client. That's an easy client for startups. We at Bosch, we had to become an easy client. So that is the foundation story of Open Bosch. By the way, I'm not the founder of Robert Bosch Venture Capital. I'm the co-founder of Open Bosch, the venture client unit of the Bosch Group. And that was the first part of my presentation. So technology change and cheap money had a strong effect on the startup ecosystem. And this had 3 effects on Bosch. We had to review our R&D budgets, we had to review our image of startups, and we had to become an easy client for startups. So let's come to Open Bosch. Who's Open Bosch? What do we do? So we are part of Bosch Ventures. Bosch Ventures is the original venture capital unit, 26 investment managers and 6 offices. We are the smallest business unit of Bosch. If there are 4 people going to the canteen, it's fully crowded. And we have 2 business modes. The first one we do since 2007, classical corporate venture capital. So we're working in the 5th fund, 920 million assets under management. Sweet spot is Series A, search fields, technology areas of Bosch. And we have been really successful in earning money by buying and selling shares of startups. And we have been really bad when you look at the innovations we transferred out of that portfolio to the organization. Just a few, almost nothing, really not good. Because the venture capital process is not designed for the integration and implementation of startup solutions within the organization. It's a money-making tool. It's a good risk tool, but it's not designed for innovation. So in the past, we had on our slides innovation leadership for Bosch. That's not true, because no business unit has become more innovative just because we make a deal, right? So that was the foundation of Open Bosch. 2018 we founded Open Bosch, which is not doing the push. The investors do the push. They meet great startups. They go to the business unit and say, "Hey, that's a great startup. You have to take a look. That's going to be a competitor you supply in the future." We still do that, but that's the investors part. Open Bosch is working in the pull. So we run through the Bosch Group. We collect the demands, we check where do the R&D budgets go, and we match these demands with top startups without investing. The philosophy is, if you want to use an iPhone, you corporate, why do you buy an Apple stock? Buy an iPhone. So really a lean setup to make use of startups as a source for innovation and competitiveness. That is how the process looks like. There's no real rocket science behind. We have 5 phases, and we start with collecting the demands. And there on the left side, there's standing partnership readiness. We check the partnership readiness. This does not refer to the startup, mostly. It refers to the Bosch Group, because I'm not lacking of startups. I'm not interested in seeing any further pitch decks. my bottleneck. I'm lacking of the Bosch people who have the interest, the commitment, the capacity, the budget to deal with great companies and to implement cool solutions. That's what I'm lacking of. And I think that's what all corporates are lacking of. So this process is looking to the pull and to gather those startups to see the demands. We have a very lean assessment phase where we filter the startups and just give a digestible list to the business unit. So not 50, but 3. And then we have a purchasing process of 2 hours. Right, so it's not like a corporate purchasing process within the automotive section. This can take months, but so we have standard R&Ds, NDAs, standard RFPs, standard quotes. We get the quotation from the startup. I go to Gudrun and say, please Gudrun, order that, and then we get it done, and we start tomorrow. So very lean purchasing process, and then we do a pilot with the business unit and the startup, and go to an adoption. This works really well. We have different roles and responsibilities. Here's the team. It's not about the persons on the screen. It's more about the roles and responsibilities. We learned you need to have venture managers in the business unit who collect the demands. So we separated within the team, within the organization, the people who have the pain point from the persons who raise the awareness for that demand and the persons who solve it. We separated them. And the venture managers, they run around, drink coffee and get those demands. They have a strong network within the business unit. They have a good experience of the portfolio. They know the processes, and they get those demands. And the venture associates are the ones who solve it. They screen, they scout the market, they find the startups, they do the project management, they do the work. So what comes out of a POC afterwards? So 99% is a customer relationship, customer-supplier relationship, but there are, of course, other effects on M&A, on joint development, on joint ventures, on different outcomes. So IT is part of the game. If you want to manage your funnel, you cannot work with Excel anymore. If you do maybe 3, 4, 5 startup POCs or pilots, that you can work with Excel. We do roughly 80. We are very proud of doing 80 pilots per year, but actually that's ridiculous. A company of the size of Bosch, why wouldn't we do 9,000 of startup pilots, right? So the machine, this process is trained to do a lot of startup POCs, to chip in a lot of innovation for the organization to become more innovative. So we track KPIs a lot. So it's really to try to quantify innovation in euro, right? Making innovation quantifiable is the holy grail from my perspective, but this is really important. We try to track business impact to really get the understanding of what is the benefit here, what are the cost reductions, revenues increase, new markets, new clients, how does the Bosch Group benefit from those startups in euro, quantified in euro, very important for us. So some benchmarks from the industries, because there are also a lot of other corporate venture client units who do this the way we do it. It's about speed, bringing in startup innovation quickly. It's about costs, having a lean setup. A couple of weeks ago, I talked to a medium-sized enterprise CEO who said, we cannot deal with startups because we don't have the millions to do that. No, it's not about the millions. Don't buy the startup, buy the solution. There are awesome startup solutions out there. And concerning the challenges we discussed yesterday in terms of sustainability and environmental change and digitalization, there are awesome startup solutions out there. You just need to make your corporate ready to make use of them. So adoption rate of 60% is a great standard. I don't want to have 90%, because then you probably do a lot of bad POCs. It's not about the POC itself. It's about the business impact that comes out of it. Yes, we got a reward, not so important. What's important is we report directly to Bosch Group CEO, Stefan Hartung. So it's a top-down process. If you want to do innovation bottom-up, that's a pain in the... It's very difficult. So try to do it top-down, get the management support to do this, and then it can work very well. Okay, so every year we award the best Bosch startup cooperation, the best teamwork in this field, and we do an event where we invite all the operational people who work with the startups, because that's tough work, and we give them the stage of the top management. We kick out middle management and invite all the people who really work with the startups and give them the stage to introduce what the startup POCs have been. Okay, so there are lots of other corporate venture client units who do it the way we do it. And I'm really excited to get in touch with you guys if you have an equivalent. And I'm interested in what's your process looking like? How do you do it? What are the functions and roles that you established? I'm looking forward to that discussion. And there is a roundtable that just took place at DB Schenker in Essen, where the corporates in those functions meet. And the next one will be hosted by Maersk in Copenhagen on June 13th, conference for this function. So this was the second part. First part was about the technology trends of the ecosystem and what that made with Bosch. The second part was, okay, how do we do that now? How are we becoming an easy client for those risky companies? And it is about the introduction of Open Bosch, which is the venture client unit of Bosch, introducing this process and the way we do it. Let's come to the third part. What did we learn now? What do we do differently? And what are we taking with us out of those last 5 years? The first thing is treating the startup ecosystem as a telescope into the future. Just by watching where capital flows, just by watching where companies are founded, you can model the markets of the future. You can see how markets will look like in 3, 4, 5 years from now, just by watching the startup ecosystems. And we learned if we don't do that very consequently, we have a strategic disadvantage. That's the first lessons learned. The second is, big corporates have a toolbox of corporate venturing. In this toolbox, there are many different tools: M&A, venture capital, venture clienting, venture building, incubation, acceleration, hackathons, co-working, shared services, I don't know, you name it, there are more. You know all of them. And corporates have been very good in using the wrong tool or using the tools not correctly. Like, don't tell me you develop a product in hackathons. Hackathons are a recruiting tool to get access to talent, right? To develop a product, you use different tools. Don't tell me you want to become more innovative, that's why you do venture capital. No, venture capital is a profitable business, but it's not the most lean way to do innovation. Therefore, you have venture clienting. So what we learned is there's a toolbox of formats where you meet startups as a corporate, and it's about extending the toolbox and also to use the tools correctly. The second thing is, now that we come to a financial crisis, last year everybody was talking about the crisis, then the markets went up again, Bitcoin went up, and now since the last 3 days, I mean, Credit Suisse this morning, a crisis is back, and that's good, because crisis gives the opportunity to change things. And this Spanish university here, they analyzed those tools I mentioned and came to the result that also venture clienting is one of the fastest and the cheapest tools in this toolbox. And when it comes to innovation, efficiency, and speed of transformation, venture clienting is the right tool for the crisis. If you don't have budget for innovation anymore, make use of external startups as a source for innovation and competitiveness. Make use of the crisis by accessing the external innovation lying within startups. So here are listed some of startups, top startups that meet our requirements of being a top startup: experienced founders, interdisciplinary teams, a strong, decisive push to market, and stuff like that. What do you think they have in common? Quick poll. All of them offer a component or a software that is part of the iPhone. So even a high volume product like the iPhone with millions per year are making use of software and components that are just a few years old, that are quite risky. And the most innovative companies out there, they have understood that the speed is also coming out of the startup ecosystem. And then the last slide from my side, every company is talking about organizational ambidexterity, right? How to manage organizational ambidexterity, the two-handedness. How can I, on the one hand, produce highly standardized and serve my customer in a very standardized and efficient way, and on the other hand, disruptively, creatively, innovatively think this process every once in a while new again. Think it new. How can you do that? Really difficult. It's like if you tell a soccer team, hey, you have to shoot to that goal. That's difficult to manage. Big corporates don't manage organizational ambidexterity. And that now brings me back to my title, Venture Clienting as a minimal invasive transformation tool. With venture clienting, you can just access the small pain points in your organization in terms of process innovation, but also in terms of new business and product innovation, minimal invasively. Just focus on the specific parts of the demands of your organization and match them with top startups. That's the way to manage and leverage transformation. Oh, that's the last slide now. Second last slide. So, what do the startups benefit from? Of course, if they win Bosch as a reference, if they sell a product to us, if they learn in the process with us, they benefit from this process. And also the business unit, they become more competitive. They get funding, they get speed, they get experience out of this process, and they get business impact in pieces. So the Bosch Group is benefiting from venture clienting, and I hope you guys do too. Thank you very much.